In this video, I'm going to be discussing the row spacing setting in Easy Team Builder. And this is exactly what it says. It is the spacing between rows. The default is 1.5. You can put 0.7 to 3.0, and this accepts up to 2 decimal places. So you could put 1.75 in, for example. And what this number actually represents, with a value of 1, the spacing from one row to the next is exactly 1 face height. Plus, in addition to that, any height differences between the player if you are running with feet alignment. To explain this a little bit better, I've got a few different examples here. I'm going to go row spacing of 1 with face align. So what this is here is if we were running with the 0 on the face feet align, or the face feet align that's going to align by face, and a row spacing of 1, this is what you're going to get. And so that value of 1 is actually representing the average height of the head. So let's say here's the average head height for the entire, for all the images. And the distance from the center of the face, from one row to the center of the face to the next row, is 1. That's where this value of 1 is being derived. Now the reason why, if you go to, let's go to a 1 with feet align, you see you get a little more spacing, and that is if you were to have this at 100. Now I do explain the face feet align in more detail in another video, because you don't have to use 0 or 100, you can use anything in between. But because this does play a role in the spacing, I'm just wanting to explain that here. The reason why you see a difference with the same row spacing based if you're using face or feet align, that's because if you're using feet align, you get the row spacing of 1, plus you get the additional added height for the rows if you got a taller row in back. So if you're using if you're doing the layout rows by height, it's going to group each row up is going to be a taller group, so you're going to get that added height difference. If you are using face align, you don't get that added height difference, because instead of making the taller players taller with face align, let me hide these 2 rows so we're looking at the back row here. But if we look at, let's take these feet right here, and if you look at where this foot is and where the feet on the taller players are, let's use, this one's even shorter. Let's use the shortest one here. So instead of pushing these taller players up so their feet match where the shorter players are, it's pushing those players down so that the center of the faces align. So you see now with this line, the center of the faces are aligning here. So because of that, if you're using a value of 1 with the face feet align at 0, you're going to see exactly 1 head height between the center of faces, and the chins will line up roughly to the top of the heads on the row below them. Anyway, there's a lot of explanation, but that's just how the numbers work. So what this means to you when you're building, I think an average of the 1.5, and this is with feet align, this is the default. That works pretty good. Just know that when you use face align, you're going to get a little bit less spacing. So if you want more, just increase that. Now you're only going to get more if you're using the rows by height. If you're doing a random build or a by file name build, you're not going to get that added difference from one row to the next, because the row up is not going to be on average taller than the row below it if you're using a random build. So there's quite a bit that goes into this, but just to look at just some of the numbers here. So doing a feet align, you got 1 here, 2 here, you got a lot more spacing, 1.5. It allows you to go from 0.7 to 3, but really I would maybe only go 1.2 up to 1.8 8. That would be the range I would stay within. I left this with a lot bigger range than you'll probably ever need. So just keep that in mind. And the big takeaway, again, is if you're using rows by height, where the row is increasing in height, going up from one row to the next, in that case, you're going to get less when you're using face align than with feet align. So just keep that in mind when you're deciding which values to use. Anyway, I hope that explanation was not too complicated. Just know that this adjusts the amount of spacing between rows, I guess, and adjust it as needed. And if all else fails and you need to move an entire row, you can always do that by turning the auto select off, so when you click, it doesn't select the player, and then you can just grab an entire row and move the entire row as needed. So I probably spent a lot more time explaining this in more detail than is needed, but I hope you did learn something from that. Thanks for watching.